I wear my sunglasses at night so I can watch my eyes. Wear my sunglasses at night so I can keep away from strangers in the night. Let's go!
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
Sick and tired of you guys using ChatGPT to respond to my discussion posts. You're supposed to use your brains. How will you ever learn if you just use robots all the time? You're all gonna work for me. You're gonna have no jobs. I'm sick and tired of you guys using ChatGPT to respond to my discussion posts. You're supposed to use your brains. How will you ever learn if you just use robots all the time? You're all gonna work for me. You're gonna have no jobs.
Okay, welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. That was actually an instructor who was really angry, apparently, at his students for using GPT. And so he was flipping out a little bit there. I totally hear where he's coming from, but it was just his reaction. The way he reacted to it was kind of funny. He's like, you guys use this all the time. All right. But shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. I hope you had a great Wednesday. We do have quite a bit to discuss tonight. I actually have 5 stories instead of 4. I received an update about information in reference to Imran Khan, a breaking story from The Intercept that I feel should be discussed. So didn't have time to add that all into the thumbnail because the thumbnail was already made, yada, yada. So I'm going to discuss that as well because I think you guys need to hear this in reference to why he was pushed out. But first and foremost, let's go ahead and say hi to people in the chat. Oh, man. That video just cracks me up. We got to start off with a laugh sometime. Shout out to Mastermind says it won't be long now. Greetings, Lorez. Hello, Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam. Smash the like. Oh, what Grayzone issue? Unconscionable of France to bomb Niger. We'll get into all of that. Shout out to Rodrigo says, is Nina planning to run once again to steal even more money from the people for her vanity campaign? No, this is in reference to something else. We'll get into that. This is actually good news. Shout out to Robin, who's a Sabby member, says, I'm ready. Let's do this. Greetings, Anthony sends a smile. Shout out to Hannah G says, who came after Grayzone now? You will see. I don't think this worked the way that they thought it would. What's going on? Bud's Not Bomb says, was good. Shout out to Bevel. RBN had something about Grayzone getting 30K from someone or other. We'll get into all of that. Greetings, Lawrence, who's a Sabby member, says, made it here just in time. I'm glad you did, Lawrence. Greetings, Ilhanner says, hi, Lawrence. What's going on? Bryce says, yo, what up, Sabby? Sabby time like Dame time. Greetings, Ravina, who's a Sabby member, says, made it before the Doobie-Doo song. What's going on? Mark says, time for Sabby Sabs and a Doobie-Doobie-Doo. Do you guys smoke when you watch me? I've wondered. I can be a lot sometimes, so I totally understand. Shout out to Terry, says hello to Bryce. Greetings, gamer, says hello. What's going on? Make sure I don't skip over Sean. Sean says, Bryce, again, what's up? What's going on, Fizbo? Says France needs a plunk in the noggin with one of their gold bars. I do not advocate violence on the show, but I hear where you're coming from. Greetings, Colin says, not all this. What's up, Nelson says, good evening, everyone. Shout out to Delthea, who's a Sabby member, says, hello, everybody. What's going on? I think I said hello to Nelson already, right? Yeah, I got you, Nelson. What's going on? Rick says, hey, y'all. Shout out to Mary, who's a Sabby member, says, hell yeah. What's up, world? Mary from Wisconsin in the house. I always wear my shades. Gotta wear those sunglasses at night, right? I wonder whatever happened to that artist. Maybe he was just kind of like a one-hit wonder. I don't know other songs by him, but it was a catchy song. Shout out to Devin, says, the doobie doobie doo. What's going on? Zacharoni Pizza. That's an interesting name. That's why he wears them. Ooh. Shout out to Ashura, says Grayzone has many donors from people to middle class. So what? Waters is a donor. We'll get into all of it. Shout out to Notori, sends a lot of laughs. Greetings, Michael says, what is bro yapping about? Yeah, I know. His reaction was funny. I was like, I have to play this as a cold open. What's going on? Mad Crab says he's right, though. Yeah, he had a good point. Shout out to Pirate, says hi again. Hello again. Greetings, Midnight says hello. Peace. Shout out to Jay, says, hey, everybody. Wanted to say a quick hello before I get back to work. I totally understand that, Jay. And shout out to Tammy T, says, good evening, all. We are going to go ahead and jump right in. Let's give a quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. You guys are out here keeping the lights on. Shout out to everyone who's a Sabby patron. If you're interested in being a patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators. There's also some Sabsters in the house. There's those lovely Sabbies looking nice and meaty. I don't know why I say it that way. And there's also members. Thank you all so much for your support. All of their names are featured here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys so much. Really do appreciate all of that jazz. Let's go ahead and get into it, guys. Let's do it. Okay. We're going to do that. All right. Let's go ahead and get started with that thumbnail. I want to show you what we're going to discuss tonight. Interesting. Tonight, we are discussing, Roger Waters and the Grayzone issue. Grayzone gets attacked, and apparently the attacks actually backfire. We're going to get into that story. I don't think it worked out the way the person who was trying to smear them thought that it would. It actually made them look, it made the Grayzone look better, and it made their attacker look worse. We'll get into all of that. We're also going to discuss Bernie Sanders funding alert. If you don't remember anything from tonight's show, it is going to be this story that I really want you to remember, because those of you, if you donated money to Bernie Sanders, you are not going to like what you got to hear tonight. Okay. But we got to talk about it. And we're also, and I have receipts. In reference to finances tonight. So I told you, if I'm going to talk about finance, I got to have receipts. But Bernie Sanders should be ashamed of himself. We're going to get into that tonight. We're also going to discuss Nina, Ohio ballot alert. So breaking news coming out of Ohio. This is actually really good news. No, I don't think Nina Turner's running again, but you're going to see what she had to say about the recent wins that they just had in Ohio, which is huge news. We're also going to discuss France attacks Niger. Yeah, so Nico House, his prediction was correct. We're going to get into all of that. They don't seem to be willing to back down and leave these countries alone. And we are also going to discuss the recent update that just happened with Imran Khan with that breaking story from The Intercept, more about why he was removed. And I think you all need to hear a little bit about this. So let's go ahead and dive in. Let's get into our first story. I want to discuss this attack from France on Niger. So France obviously is not taking it, nicely in reference to Niger, the coup that happened this year. We covered this a couple of days ago. They don't seem to be accepting the fact that coup leaders in Niger do not want France meddling in their country anymore. They don't want France taking their resources. They want to be left alone. And they already issued a warning that we covered a couple of days ago that if they saw them intervening again, they would consider this to be a declaration of war. Before we get into the attack from France, I just want to echo something here from Black Agenda Report, just to remind you why the coup happened, whether you agree with it or not. So let's go ahead and get into the first part here. This is from Black Agenda Report. It says all Africans should condemn the call for an ECOWAS, I call it ECOWAS. I'll explain that in a second. For an ECOWAS-led military invasion. And you can see here people here in support of the coup. And so let's get into, I think I'm just going to do these first 3 paragraphs just to give you the backstory again, in case you missed the story we discussed last time. The African team of the Black Alliance for Peace and the U.S. Out of Africa Network condemned the threats on the Economic Community of West African States, so I call it ECOWAS, to lead a military intervention into Niger. We believe this would be an act of subservience to U.S., EU, and NATO interest. As Western imperialism seems to be losing its neo-colonialist grip on Africa, it is trying to expand its use of puppets and proxies to undermine resistance. The military coup in Niger on July 26 deposed President Bazoum and installed General Tiani as the country's new leader. In power since 2021, Bazoum and his party were reliable servants of French and U.S. imperialism. So this is one of the reasons why they decided to push him out, because he was actually catering to Western colonialism. All skin folk aren't kinfolk. We've talked about this before. Just because someone may be a part of your country and they're from there, that doesn't mean they're not going to be willing to sell out their own people if it benefits their personal interests or their political interests and give in to colonialist attitudes. This may help explain why the U.S. and its NATO allies seemed overly concerned about this particular coup. The West's hypocritical claims of standing for democracy in Niger fall flat when compared to its response to the military coup in Sudan, as well as the political repression faced by the popular movement in that country. The U.S. and its Western partners has had a hand in orchestrating countless coups in Africa, such as those against democratically elected leaders, Kwame of Ghana, Patrice Lumumba of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, to name a few. So that's just to give you a little bit of background, just in case you didn't see the story when we covered it when the coup happened. Now, I want to go into what has happened recently. There are now accusations from Niger coup leaders that France is violating their airspace. So just as Nico House predicted this on Twitter, that they would find their way in anyway, that is now happening. It has come into fruition. We're going to go ahead and get into this clip here from Al Jazeera.
Niger's coup leaders are accusing French troops of carrying out a plan to destabilize the country. They say French forces released rebel fighters. Now, France has more than 1,000 soldiers in Niger as part of a mission against armed groups.
The Council wishes to announce the extremely serious events that are underway in Niger due to the behavior of French forces and their accomplices on our territory. Indeed, today at around 6:30 a.m., a position of the Niger National Guard was attacked 30 kilometers from the Samaria gold site. At this moment, the toll is not yet established.
So let me pause here for a second. So I just want to reiterate something that the commentator mentioned, that there were over 1,000 French troops in Niger. Now, again, their leader did announce that any type of intervention from them, they will see this from the West. They will see it as a declaration of war. So get ready, people. If this doesn't settle pretty soon, we could possibly see another conflict happening as well.
Emin Idris is following developments for us from Abuja in neighboring Nigeria.
According to the spokesman of the military leaders in Niger, the incident happened today, this morning, around 6:30 in the morning in the Tillaberi region. This is an area where we've seen a lot of activity, militant activity from groups linked with Al-Qaeda and ISIL. And what they're saying actually was that a French aircraft took off from a neighboring country in West Africa, in Central Africa, and then cut off all communications. And they think that the French are involved in this. But again, some analysts believe that this is an area where we've seen a lot of activity from groups linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIL. And this was feared since day one of the coup, that some members of the armed groups in the region may take advantage of what's happening. So it's not clear yet whether or not the attack was carried out by the French or by armed groups that have been busy in the area called Tillaberi in Niger.
So I'm going to go ahead and disagree with what he said in reference to it's not clear. Based on reports that I've read, it seems to be pretty clear. You got to remember, Al Jazeera, sometimes they can be sometimes they're right on certain issues, and sometimes sometimes they have a tendency to side with the West, even when the West can be incorrect. But I don't think they would just make up this accusation. Obviously, you can tell if it's a French plane or not. But this is exactly what some people did predict, that there would be some type of retaliation from France after Niger made the statement that they made, that, no, you are not going to take our resources anymore. We do not want you in our country anymore. So you have to remember, Niger has a resource called uranium. And this is another thing that we discussed, that France was actually taking uranium from Niger to basically provide sources of energy for its own people. Meanwhile, you have people in Niger with no lights on, no electricity. So again, just stealing from these countries to serve their own. Meanwhile, the country that has the resources doesn't even get to use the resource. It's a common tale of colonialism. It still exists today.
France has denied those accusations. Bernard Smith has the latest from Paris.
The military group in control of Niger at the moment says its airspace has been violated by the French as part of a broader plan to destabilize the country. They've provided no evidence of this, and the government in Paris has not commented so far, but they would be unlikely to comment on any military action that they were involved in.
You see what they're trying to do with the narrative here? Notice how they're leaning towards supporting the West. They're leaning towards supporting France by giving excuses for France. Well, they're less likely to respond anyway, yada, yada. So just pay attention to this. It's really interesting to me, even if it's a network like Al Jazeera, which covers international news for the most part, even they sometimes can still cater to the West. And that's something that we need to keep in mind. I honestly feel as though this could escalate. And if this does escalate, it's not going to be good. Now, Margaret Kimberly recently was on RBN, and she said she doesn't support, any type of coup because of the ramifications that can come from that. And I totally understand where she's coming from with that. But at the same time, Margaret Kimberly said, but still, these countries should be left alone. And if I had to be on a side, I had to pick a side, I wouldn't be on the side of France. I mean, Macron can't even solve the problems that they have in France right now. There are people in France, like, again, the protests and everything that have been happening, people demanding more from their leader of France. He can't even fix his own country, but he has his hands in everyone else's. Let's continue.
While it was taking place, it's not the first time the French Niger, and there are American troops there as well.
And neither one of them should be there. American troops should not be in Niger, and French troops should not be in Niger. Why do we have these bases all over the world? They should not be there. Leave these people alone and let them govern their own countries. Stop coming in and removing their leaders. Stop stealing their resources. Leave these people alone.
No indication or that they've been involved in any military activity, and no indication or no signaling from the French or the Americans that that is taking place or is taking place.
Right. And they would be so truthful about that because why? Now, I want to get into this clip here from Nico because I thought Nico's really good at these short clips that he does for Hotspot. Him and Nick have really been killing it. But Nico breaks it down in a way that I think you should see as well. He said that France attacked Niger's National Guard. France violated international law and attacked a sovereign nation having an internal conflict. Neo-colonialists will ignore this because international laws never apply to the colonizers, only the colonized. And this is 100% spot on. Let's hear what Nico has to say.
This is not a drill. The Niger junta has said that the French armed forces have attacked Niger's National Guard and violated their no-fly zone ordinance. Now, France has denied all of these accusations. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really fucking believe them, but they denied it. Now, a few days ago, I did a video specifically detailing why France has the most to lose if Niger's coup was to stay in place. And I said that they would be the ones to attack. And if what the junta is claiming is true, then France literally just said, fuck ECOWAS, fuck international borders, fuck international law. We're going to invade because our country literally cannot survive without stealing uranium from Niger. Now, some were claiming that this was merely just another coup in Africa and it will be quelled just like all the other coups. And most people won't really care about it. And I had been saying for some time that this could spark World War III because there are too many resources, too much oil, too much gas, too much uranium, too much gold.
And too much of the fact that these other countries don't actually have their own resources or use their own resources, or they have overused their resources, so they steal another country's resources. You have to think about this. Like, why is this happening? Why are they doing this? For all the people who make fun of countries in Africa, and I've seen this oftentimes where people will make fun of African people, the way that they talk, the way that they dress. They'll make fun of the fact of people in Africa living in like poverty or living in huts, which that's not the case for everyone, by the way. There are cities in Africa as well. But it's really interesting to me that they'll make those assertions, but at the same time, they'll leave out the fact that these countries, a lot of those countries in Africa are rich in resources. That's usually why we are there. The US military, the French military, all of these Western powers, if they're there with a military base, there's usually a reason because there's something that they're taking from that country. And they can use any type of excuse and say that they're trying to protect the people. Protect the people from what? Protect the people from themselves? The problem usually happens when those Western allies or those Western countries come into those countries, and they're the reason why conditions get worse for people who are in those countries. They don't want to leave them alone because they're taking things from them to help their own people. And this has been a common problem. Now, what is going to be interesting, it will be interesting to see where the Biden administration lands on this particular issue. We're going to give you another update after this clip about how the U.S. doesn't know if there's too much that they can do. Because you look some kind of way if we're coming into election season 2024 and you're trying to get Black voters, and you look some kind of way if you're treating people in Africa kind of shitty. I'm just keeping it real. And no, that's Africa. That's not the US, but still, Doesn't look too good for you.
And too much dignity at stake for neocolonialists. They can't and they could not let this slide. And with the pipeline that is supposed to be built through Niger at stake as well, corporations couldn't afford to let this slide. This is going to get worse before it gets better.
Okay, and speaking of getting worse, the U.S. doesn't really know what to do here. Got to remember who's in charge. Coup leaders in Niger grow increasingly defiant, U.S. officials losing hope. The junta has refused to guarantee the safety of the deposed president, and France and countries in the region are drawing up plans for a potential military intervention. So let's compare that statement to what the gentleman said on Al Jazeera, where he told you, well, we have no proof that France actually did anything and they haven't responded, but they're not going to respond if they did some type of military intervention. We've heard nothing from the U.S. or from France. France and other countries in the region are drawing up plans for a possible military intervention. Let's continue. Here we go down here. All right. At a meeting between officials from the U.S. and Niger in Niamey, the county's capital, on Monday, a U.S. ally and top Nigerian general involved in the coup declined to guarantee the safety of President Bazoum, now being detained by the rebels, leaving some U.S. officials concerned Bazoum could be in danger. Now, why would they be concerned about this particular leader? Because he was in favor and supporting the militarism and the imperialism that was going on from the U.S. and from France. So yes, he's one of them. He's from Niger. He's one of them, but he sold them out. That's the only reason they care about this official, this political leader, former political leader. That's the only reason. Let's continue. Acting Secretary of State Victoria Nuland traveled to Niger on Monday with the hope of meeting with Bazoum. The democratically elected president toppled in the coup. Always notate, guys, when you see them say democratically elected and they're referring to another country, always keep in mind that 9 times out of 10, the U.S. government was involved with that person getting elected. It's always democratically elected when it's someone that they approve of. But when it's someone they disapprove of, they never use the phrase democratically elected. This is just something I've noticed. The democratically elected president toppled in the coup, and the new self-proclaimed leader of Niger, General Tikani. Nigerian officials blocked both meetings. Nuland, along with U.S. diplomatic and military officials, instead met with the junta's chief of defense, General Salou Barmu, who has led the Nigerian forces for the past decade. He was trained by American forces and worked closely with U.S. military leaders and troops assigned to train and support Nigerian special forces with intelligence collection in their fight against Islamic extremist groups. Again, this is another thing they use. This is not to say that there aren't Islamic extremist groups, but oftentimes this is an excuse that the U.S. government will use for the reason for their presence in that country. Let's continue. We go on. The Americans met with the defense chief and others from the new junta for more than 2 hours, and Nuland described the conversation as quite difficult at times. Officials familiar with the discussion said the military junta made it clear to Nuland and other U.S. officials present that they believe very strongly that their seizure of power was just, that they have broad public support, and that Bazoum is no longer the legitimate leader of Niger. Bamu also made it clear that the coup leaders will not release Bazoum from house detention and that he will not be returned to power, the official said. Barmu also did not guarantee Bazoum's safety, especially if outside military forces intervene in Niger, two of the officials have said. So again, Victoria Nuland is over there to see if they will release Bazoum, because again, that is the person, the former leader, that's who the US government wants in power. That's why. And oftentimes, more and more over and over again, the United States government choosing leaders of other countries. Imagine if other countries chose our leader. Imagine if they chose our president. You went to the voting booth to vote, but they say, nah, we don't want you to have that guy. Take this one. How would you feel? Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken spoke with Bazoum on Tuesday afternoon, and State Department officials on Wednesday again called on coup leaders to protect him. We are deeply concerned about the welfare of President Bazoum and his family and the deteriorating conditions of their detention. As we have since the beginning of this situation in both public and private communications, the U.S. continues to raise the importance of President Bazoum and his family's well-being and safety. We reiterate our calls for their immediate release. Nuland also met with NGO leaders and others from civil society. She heard very clearly from them that they are deeply concerned about the situation. It is clear there are many people who aren't going to stadiums and marching in the streets the way you see so-called supporters of the junta doing, because they have real concerns about their safety if they do so. But their support for democracy is very much real. You see how they throw in this word democracy again? We have to help the people fight for their democracy. In other words, we have to make sure that the U.S. government has control over this country. It's a mess. It really is a mess. It goes on to say, as U.S. official who asked not to be named said, the coup leaders appear increasingly defiant. See the vocabulary? Defiant. How dare you do what we didn't tell you to do? How dare you not listen to our orders and our instructions? Even though we're not even in this country, we don't live in this country, and we're not one of you. How dare you not do what the Western powers tell you to do? The junta appears to be fairly dug in. There is no indication of them being willing to compromise now. In fact, they are becoming harder in their views. So much for diplomacy, huh? Several U.S. officials agreed that while there is still some hope for diplomacy, it is fading. There's no keen sense of optimism after the meeting. So basically, Victoria Nuland went over there and got shut down. And they don't like that. When they say things like there's still some hope for diplomacy, what they really mean is there's still some hope that they can still maintain the control that they had over that country. That's really what they mean. What other country does this? What other country has their feet in every other country's in reference to their political leaders, in reference to their resources? Like the U.S. is notorious for doing this and trying to tell these people how they should run their own country and how they should live. All the meanwhile, allowing and agreeing with other Western allies to steal their resources while the people in that country struggle. They don't tell you that part. This article doesn't tell you anything about the resources. The video clip I showed you from Al Jazeera didn't say anything about the resources. And if you don't know the backstory, or if you don't do the research, it makes it seem like all of a sudden a bunch of people just rose up and decided to take over. That's why it's important that people watch independent media. Mainstream media isn't going to tell you all this either. So let's finish up here. American officials say they are not yet leaning towards formally declaring this a coup, which would, under U.S. law, trigger a halt to training and hundreds of millions of dollars in aid to Niger. The U.S. military support in the country gives Washington a bargaining chip because the coup leaders told U.S. officials they want to keep it. We are trying to leverage the support that we have that we know they want. What a mess. What a mess. And I just want to read this last piece here. The U.S. military has roughly 1,110 troops in Niger at 3 bases. Why are there 3 bases there? The Biden administration has no decision about drawing down the U.S. troop presence there. The U.S. does have contingency plans for consolidating or withdrawing U.S. troops if neighboring nations send in forces and the situation becomes dangerous. You have the conflict in Sudan. That could be the next proxy war. Now you have the situation in Niger. This could be another proxy war. They just continue to keep these wars going just to continue to support the military industrial complex. More war, more money. That's it. We have no business over there and no business trying to tell those people what they should do in their country. I'm going to go to some of the comments. Thank you for the super chat, Perry. France should solve its problems first. I agree with you 100%. 100. Shout out to JB, says, hello, everyone. Greetings, Dwayne, says, the problem is colonialism and neo-colonialism. Bingo. And Alice says, it's just amazing the U.S. here, there, everywhere. Imperialism on steroids. Everywhere. Now, to the U.S., we'll probably talk about this tomorrow. Is the U.S. trying to help people in Hawaii right now from the fires? No, they got their hands everywhere else. That's the problem. That's a big problem. Okay, let's go on. We're going to go to our next story here. This is breaking news coming out of Ohio. This is really good news. I'm super, super excited about this. We have talked about ballot initiatives on this channel since, I think, the beginning of this year, maybe. We've gone through almost all the states, almost all of them. And when this story was announced, it made me feel good inside. You know, what happened in Ohio? Because, again, it highlights the importance of local news and local issues, but also the fact that people showed up to participate in a special election that really could decide the future of how ballot measures are passed in their state and the future of reproductive decisions. And I'm proud that the people did the damn thing. I was nervous. I was worried. I told you guys that this was coming up, that this election was going to be important. And I hope people didn't sit at home because it was a special election and people usually don't turn out in greater numbers to special elections. But the people showed up. Now, Nina Turner, as you know, is from Ohio. She had some things to say about this. She was recently on CNN. And I want to go ahead and play that clip from Case Study QB out here doing the damn thing. It's the case. It's the case to the Q to the B. Here we go.
So overnight, huge news out of Ohio where voters rejected what is known as Issue 1, a measure that would have changed the state's referendum law, allowing an amendment to its constitution. This was...
Pause this right here and I'll go back. So as you can see, raise the threshold to amend the state constitution. 57% of people, Ohioans, is that what they're called? Ohioans, said no. 43.0% said yes. Why is this incredibly important? The majority rule ballot measure that's been going around, actually starting November 2022, there were a couple of states that we went through that had that measure. They were trying to make it so that in order for a ballot measure to pass, it has to actually have 60% of the vote to be considered a majority. Now, I know some of you listening are like, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it's just a way for them to make it more difficult for direct democracy for the people, because ballot initiatives are direct democracy, not representative democracy, because you're voting on what you want. Now, the way it is now, and it's going to stay that way, thank goodness, is that the majority rules, meaning that if 52% say yes and 48% say no, then the measure, the yeses have it. They wanted to increase that to 60%. South Dakota tried to do this too, but the people of South Dakota said, we're too smart for this. This is not going to work for us. So they voted against it as well. And now Ohioans have voted against it. So this is huge news, especially when it comes to reproductive rights. I'm glad they showed up to participate in this, and I want to go ahead and continue here.
Known as Issue 1, a measure that would have changed the state's referendum law, allowing an amendment to its constitution. This was driven by Republicans ahead of an upcoming November vote that has abortion rights on the ballot. Let's bring in two people who have a long history of running presidential campaigns. Nina Turner was the national co-chair, I should say, of Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign. Also, very notably for this conversation, a former Ohio state senator, and Kevin Madden, former top aide to Mitt Romney, running his presidential campaigns in 2008 and 2012.
I was just going to tell you guys that Kevin looks like a game show host. Doesn't he look like he could host a game show? Come on down. The Price is Right.
Top aide to Mitt Romney, running his presidential campaigns in 2008 and 2012. Nina, got to start with you. It's your state. You know, huge amount of money, over $32 million poured in, huge amount of attention. Who thought that many people, more than in the last election, would come out for this? But they did. What does it mean for the state and the country?
Yeah, they did. It's a win for Ohioans. Poppy, is very clear that the GOP efforts to take away freedom, take away the right of the people of this great state have had that right to put referenda on the ballot since about 1912. It shows very clearly that they were rejected, and they were rejected soundly. So hopefully they have learned their lessons. It's also reminded me of 2011 when they tried to take away collective bargaining rights, and they were soundly rejected there as well. So Ohioans showed up, and they showed out, and they did the right thing.
So Kevin,
Nina, I want to ask you about the shakeup number 2 in Ron DeSantis' campaign. He has replaced the person who's going to run his campaign. It's now going to be James Uthmeyer, who ran the shop for him before, was successful when it came to work in Tallahassee, but does not have a lot of political experience on the national stage, but someone who knows DeSantis' family extraordinarily well. Is this enough to make a McCain-like turnaround, or no?
Let me pause here for just a second because the two are connected. So in November, there is going to be that reproductive rights option on the ballot, right? So that's why they wanted to try to make it more difficult for something like that to pass. That's why they wanted to do the 60%. Luckily, people in Ohio showed up and said, no, we're not falling for that. Thank goodness. Now, when they pivot here to Ron DeSantis, what's interesting about this is that I don't know if you've seen the polls recently, but the recent Republican poll that I saw on Twitter today from Political Polls actually has Ron DeSantis now dropping to 3rd place on the Republican side, which is interesting to me considering that he was 2nd place behind Trump all this time. He has now been pushed down, so to speak, by Vivek. So Vivek Ramaswamy actually is now ahead of Ron DeSantis on the Republican poll. So this is actually Ron DeSantis, I think, trying to make moves with his campaign to try to improve his poll numbers. I don't know if this is really going to work. I think it's just him. Like I've said this before, he's not charismatic. He's focusing on culture like wars and not focusing on the economy, which is where a lot of people care about right now. And I think that's why he's continuing to sink in the polls. Now, that being said, why are these two connected? Because Ron DeSantis said that if he became president, that in reference to reproductive rights, that law that they passed in Florida, he wants to implement that nationally across the United States. So it's really important that the states stand up. It's really important that when you have those ballot measures, whether you want to vote for a politician or not is besides the point. You can leave that blank, but still always show up to vote for the ballot measures so that you don't lose your direct democracy, especially if you're one of those people that lives in a ballot initiative state.
No, not at all. I mean, the person that he picked also helped him with these culture wars. Yeah. I mean, this man, you have in Governor DeSantis, he traffics in divisive and racist ideology. His strategy has been to try to out-Trump President Trump. It's not working for him. He's not spending enough time on the substantive issues like healthcare, the environment, economic disparities. We have one of his bigger donors that admonished him and said, the way that you're going is not going to work. Mm-hmm. This man is violent. He talked about slitting throats on day one. when he was in New Hampshire. Can all of us imagine if then Senator Barack Obama had said that on day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or day 365, that as president, he would start slitting throats? He would have been called a very violent man. DeSantis is violent. There are people suffering. Children are suffering in the great state of Florida. But instead of dealing with the 45% of working Floridians who are living near or at poverty, children living in poverty, 70% of those kids are Black or Hispanic. Instead of dealing with those issues, he has made it very clear that no Blacks need apply, no women need apply, no immigrants need apply. And he thinks that these cultural...
We lost Nina Shot at the top of the hour. It is 8 o'clock. We are sorry.
I think the feds got Nina on that one. But what I was going to say is that I think this is really important. I really do think that like Ron DeSantis focusing on culture war issues and not making the economy his number one priority. I believe that is the reason why someone like Vivek has moved ahead of him in the polls. And I believe that's the reason why Ron DeSantis his poll numbers are decreasing, because he's not focusing on the correct issues at this point in time. Now, one thing I want to add here as well, I think we need to pay attention to these kind of wins, because like I said before, this is good news. And I know it's local news, but it's huge. It made national news. You know, this made me feel good. Voters in Ohio reject GOP-backed proposal that would have made it tougher to protect abortion rights. I told you the people were smart. They were like, hell to the no. So this was the whole no on one issue when they were telling people vote no on one. And it was actually Roger Meadows who gave me the heads up about this, because I was like, what? Yeah, I see you guys saying the chat is back. The chat has been a mess this week on YouTube. Not just this channel, but other ones as well. I don't know what's happening. Anywho, the defeat of issue 1 on Tuesday keeps in place a simple majority threshold for passing future constitutional amendments rather than the 60% supermajority that was proposed. Its supporters said the higher bar would protect the state's foundational document from outside interest groups. Whatevers. Voter opposition to the proposal was widespread, even spreading into traditionally Republican territory. In fact, in early returns, support for the measure fell far short of former President Donald Trump's performance during the 2020 election in nearly every county. And what does that tell you? This is also connected to Ron DeSantis' campaign, because that is telling you that even when it comes to the abortion rights issue, even some Republicans are not in favor of removing a woman's right to choose. So someone like Mr. Ron DeSantis running on the message that he's running on and trying to make the rest of America like Florida, that's actually not doing well with people, and not just obviously Democrats and independents, but that is also not doing well, particularly with the abortion issue with his own party. Something to think about. But good news, shout out to Ohio, shout out to the people for showing up and doing the damn thing, guys. You have to show up and participate in local politics. It does matter. It is important, especially if you live in one of these states where they have these ballot measures. So, yeah, let me go to some of the comments here. Shout out to Hardlands Media, says speak the truth, Sabs. What's up, Kit? Shout out, Kit. Steve says, yeah, conservative women don't want to be incubators. There you go. Yeah, I mean, the abortion issue, and this is going to be a thing for Trump too. Like, the abortion issue is not what it used to be in reference to, okay, everyone that's a Republican is against it. Things have changed. Things have changed. Eric, I'm ready for the second. Yeah, whenever you're ready for type VNC. But yeah, so thanks so much for those people for showing up and doing the damn thing. This next story, I'm just going to go ahead and warn you. If you donated money to Bernie Sanders, you might just want to get comfortable for a bit. If you feel you need to go grab something to drink or a snack, get comfy, because we're about to go for a bumpy ride. There was a story that broke yesterday And I had to do a lot of digging because I did not want to cover this story if I did not have any type of financial receipts to back up what is said. I now have those receipts, and I don't think you guys are going to like what you're about to see, because it appears that apparently Bernie Sanders is accused of giving over $200,000 of campaign funds to his own nonprofit organization. I kid you not. I want to give a shout out, give credit where credit's due to Case Study QB for this clip. And then we're going to go into the article and then some financial receipts. It does not look good from Bernie based on what I have seen. So prepare yourself.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders quietly funneled $200,000 from his campaign's coffers to his wife's nonprofit institute. Fox News Digital reports that organization appears to do very little on paper and pays six figures worth of compensation to her son. Federal Election Commission records show the independent senators committee cut two $100,000 checks to the Sanders Institute for reported charitable contributions in January and March. The expenditures are the largest from the Sanders campaign to any entity this election cycle. Senator Sanders' campaign and the Sanders Institute did not respond to Fox News Digital's inquiries by press time. Vermont.
Now, I don't know about you, but when I donated to Bernie Sanders, I donated to his presidential campaign. I didn't donate money to him for him to take that money and use it towards other organizations, whether it's nonprofit, etc. That is not why I donated money to Bernie Sanders, period. And this is why even today, I still don't tell you to donate to people. This is why I don't tell you to donate to politicians. Here you have Bernie Sanders, whose main message was follow the money. We got to stop corporate greed. We got to break up these billionaires, corporate interest. We got to follow the money. Apparently, Bernie meant that about everyone except for himself. Apparently, he didn't want us to follow his money, though. And here's the article here from the New York Post. Bernie Sanders wired $200K in campaign money to family nonprofit. Bernie, it is not looking good for you. Bernie Sanders' campaign committee wired $200,000 early this year to a nonprofit established by his wife and stepson filing show. And I'm going to show you those filings. The Friends of Bernie Sanders made the payments to the Sanders Institute in two installments of $100,000 in January and March, according to disclosures with the Federal Election Commission. So that's the FEC. So all campaign contributions are reported by the FEC. Let's continue. Those outlays are the largest from the pro-Sanders committee this year. Fox News first reported on the contribution. The senator's wife, Jane Sanders, and stepson, David Driscoll, co-established the think tank and unveiled it publicly in 2017 after Sanders' insurgent 2016 presidential campaign catapulted him to stardom among progressives. Interesting that this nonprofit started right after that 2016 race. Let's go on here. Not much is known about the think tank's output, though it appears to be paltry. The group's website primarily consists of links to articles on other outlets by fellows like former Labor Secretary Robert Reich. Robert Reich's a capitalist, and he's establishment Democrat. He's good on some labor issues. But why are they linked up with Let's continue. The website also includes a vertical marking a conference of progressives in Burlington, Vermont called The Gathering. The event took place in the fall of 2018. In 2019, the group briefly halted its operations while the Vermont senator vied for presidency in 2020, though they appear to have resumed since then. The Sanders Institute's stated mission is to revitalize democracy by actively engaging individuals, organizations, and the media in the pursuit of progressive solutions to economic, environmental, racial, and social justice issues. More than 1/3 of the nonprofit's income appears to have been spent on salaries. Remember what I was telling you one time about nonprofits, how you got to be careful with nonprofits? Like, it sounds like it's a good thing, but then you find out, you do a little bit digging and you find out who some of these nonprofits are connected to and where the money's actually going. A lot of people that work for nonprofits, at least here in the Boston area, usually don't make much, but the CEO or the people who are the head of the nonprofit, a lot of times they're connected to a CEO who is corporate, who does have a lot of money. Those people do pretty well. Now, you come to tell me that more than 1/3 of the nonprofit's income was spent on salaries? Where'd the other money go? Where was this money spent to where is it? Actively engage individuals, organizations, and the media in the pursuit of progressive solutions to economic, environmental, racial, and social justice issues. Where was the money spent on that? And how much? What was done here? That's why I don't rock with nonprofits like that. This is exactly why. Now, this is according to the 2021 tax forms. Let's get into it. Driscoll, that's Bernie's stepson, the executive director, was compensated $152,653 in salary and other benefits per those documents. One of the Institute's biggest expenditures was the Timeline Project, which is described as a resource based on Bernie Sanders' work over 4 decades that will become one of the key pillars of the website. Are you guys familiar with this Timeline Project? Because when I read this article, that was the first I heard of that. Let's continue. The group spent $159,885 on that endeavor in 2021, the tax filing said. Prior to the launch of the Sanders Institute, the independent senator was harshly critical of then rival Hillary Clinton over the Clinton Foundation. You don't say. If this isn't the pot calling the kettle black. Oh man, let's go on. If you ask me about the Clinton Foundation, do I have a problem when a sitting secretary of a state and a foundation run by her husband collects many millions of dollars from foreign governments which are dictatorships? Bernie Sanders told CNN at the time. You don't have a lot of civil liberties or democratic rights in Saudi Arabia. You don't have a lot of respect there for opposition points of view, for gay rights, for women's rights. Do I have a problem with that? Yeah, I do. It is not a parent who has donated to the Sanders Institute based on tax records. I got those receipts. The Post contacted a Sanders representative and the Sanders Institute for comment. Bernie Sanders was last elected to the Senate in 2018 and is up for re-election in 2024. Both Democrats must defend 23 seats this cycle, including all 3 held by their aligned independents. Republicans only have to safeguard 11 Senate seats. Okay. Let's go to the FEC filing. Let's see what's been happening with Friends of Bernie. So let's go ahead and bring this up here. So this is the FEC. I just want to show you guys so you know what you're looking at. This is the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, and we're looking at disbursements. We're going to sort this because you can sort it in reference to the amount, right? So if you'll notice, it says results for Friends of Bernie Sanders, okay? That is that nonprofit. You'll see the years. You'll see from January 2023 till December of 2024, so a broader range. Let's sort by amount. So we're going to put the highest amount at the top. Okay, I tried to make it big enough so you guys can see, okay? Yeah, you can see it better. All right. Friends of Bernie Sanders. So you'll see the spender, the recipient, the date that it was dispersed, and the amount. We're starting with the higher amounts. Here's that $100,000. That was March 1st, 2023. Here's another $100,000. That was January 18th, 2023. And here's over $60,000. That's for American Express. So the spender is Friends of Bernie. And then you'll see the recipient here. So once we get to the third line, we're going to American Express, Trueverse, yada, yada. We want to focus on the first two lines here. Friends of Bernie Sanders, $100,000. The recipient was the Sanders Institute. Same thing for the second line, different dates. Everybody follow me there. Okay. Now, there's more. What exactly is the Friends of Bernie Sanders? Let's go ahead and pull this up. This is also from the FEC. So again, for some people who tend to still be Bernie stands, I don't know what to say to you if you still rock with Bernie after this. I really don't know what else to tell you. This isn't me making anything up. This is not my opinion. This is coming directly from the FEC. So let's continue. Friends of Bernie Sanders. About this committee. Active Quarterly Senate Principal Campaign Committee. The registration date was May 2nd of 2005. So you'll see here about this committee, authorizing candidate Bernard Sanders. Committee information, Friends of Bernie Sanders, and you'll see the P.O. box there for Burlington, Vermont. You even see the treasurer is Laura Hoggard, and you'll also see committee designation, Principal Campaign Committee. Authorizing candidate again, Bernard Sanders. Okay. That's the Friends of Bernie Sanders. So in the New York Post article, they actually said they didn't have information to show you who had donated to that organization. But I have a receipt to show you someone who donated to that organization, and you should be very concerned. Wind 2 Inc. Now, this is the 990 form, the 990 PF form for Wind 2 Inc. That's a company. I'm going to tell you who this company is in a second. Watch this. Tax returns filed by nonprofit organizations are public records. The Internal Revenue Service releases them in two formats, page images and raw data in XML. The raw data is more useful, especially to researchers, because it can be extracted and analyzed more easily. Let's see a little bit about this organization here, this company here. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to try to go in as far as I can if it'll let me. Okay, there we go. So you'll see the name of the foundation is Win2 Inc. There's the employer identification number. Again, this is public information. Now, I want to show you something about this company. We're going to scroll down. Let's see who they're connected to. Scroll all the way down. You'll see all the different companies. So here, it says grants and contributions paid during the year of approved for future payment. That's important. You are about to see organizations that Wind2 Inc. has actually donated to. As we scroll down, one of the organizations that they donated to, let me make sure I get up to the T's. Right here, boom. The Sanders Institute. Uh-oh, I think I made it too big for you guys. Let me go back to where I was. There we go. Let me go back to my T's. Sorry, guys. These things sometimes are kind of hard to show in here. Right here, the Sanders Institute. 131 Church Street, Burlington, Vermont. So this company, Win2 Inc., has donated to the Sanders Institute. And it says, building content capacity at the Sanders Institute, $250,000. Now, if you don't know who this company is, you probably won't see a problem with this. But let me show you who this company is. Boy, I can't make this up. Win2 Inc. is a private grant-making foundation for philanthropy, volunteerism, and grant-making foundations. 501c3, yada, yada. That's not the issue. If we scroll down, look at this, guys. Key employees and officers, Robert A. Smith, who's the treasurer, James M. Walton, director, president. Now, who is James M. Walton? I'll give you guys a couple seconds in the chat. Who's going to answer first? Who knows who James M. Walton is? Give you a couple of seconds, and you'll understand why this is a problem. All right, I see someone got it in the chat. Yes, 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 Christy. Yes, Saul. Yes, Robert. Yes, Lee Ford. Yes, Jim Walton. His government name is James Walton, but he's known as Jim Walton. Is an American businessman, currently an heir to the fortune of Walmart, the world's largest retailer. As of October 2022, Walton was the 17th richest person in the world with a net worth of US dollars 61 billion, according to Bloomberg Billionaire Index. He is the youngest son of Sam Walton. This guy. So, someone explain something to me really quick. Why is Bernie Sanders in bed with one of the Waltons? Oh, don't get mad at me. Don't come for me. Okay? I would have never even known about this if it wasn't for that story that was released yesterday. Someone explain it to me. Why would Bernie Sanders allow his foundation to take money from the Waltons? What happened to no corporate greed? What happened to Bernie Sanders constantly talking about how greedy and corrupt the Waltons were? How they had so much wealth and they paid their workers so little. Remember that? The greed, the corruption, he said. But here is Bernie Sanders taking money from the Waltons. Win2 Inc. James M. Walton, director and president. You can't hide it. You know, it's like you can run from these types of like financial information. You can run for a while, but eventually this shit is exposed. This is a fraud. Bernie Sanders is a fraud. I've been trying to tell you guys that Bernie was also corrupt. Now, you can't make this up, man. You take campaign contribution money and you take that money and put it into the Sanders Institute? He was basically just like all the other people that he talked about. You ain't got a leg to stand on right now. You ain't got a leg to all this stuff about Hillary Clinton is corrupt. Well, so are you. How would you feel? How would you guys feel if I sat here all this time saying the Waltons are corrupt and it's the billionaires? We got to get rid of the billionaires. And then you found out that I was taking, and this ain't no chump change. This is no chump change. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's just, sorry, I had to cough for a second. You can't hide it. You can't make this up. Now, a lot of times people make fun of the New York Post, but they did their work on this. They did their due diligence. I'm just going to keep it real. $200,000. And I'm going to tell you what this really means. You know what this means? When Bernie Sanders had those two campaigns and when he was criticizing the corporations and billionaires and the greed, that tells you that Bernie really did not have any intentions fighting those people. How are you going to fight the people giving you money? How are you going to fight the people? How are you going to fight back against the Walton family and they giving your organization hundreds of thousands of dollars? I don't know. I don't know, man. That's not good. That's not good. Did I get the middle name wrong? Oh, sorry, I got the middle name wrong. Sorry, I forgot the middle name wrong, guys. But this is a problem. This is a problem. Like Bernie taking this money. And I want to remind you of what Dr. Shiva said when it came to Bernie Sanders. He basically put him and Hillary Clinton in the same category. Watch this.
I never wanted to run for political office. All that changed when I saw working Americans as never before being duped by the establishment.
That was that part right there. That part right there when he said duped. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get it right there. For some reason, that part's hard to stop. I'll stop it when it gets there.
Never before being duped by the establishment.
When he said duped by the establishment, notice he has Bernie and Hillary there. It's not like he said duped by the establishment and just had Hillary Clinton and he has Donald Trump afterwards. No, he has Bernie right there with Hillary. Then he goes on to show Trump.
And the not so obvious establishment across left.
All these people are in on this together. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I really do think all of this, all these people are in on this together. I really do. Like, look at it. He said, even the not so establishment, the people who are not so obvious.
Never before being duped by the establishment and the not so obvious establishment.
See who he showed? He showed TYT. He showed AOC. He showed Tim Pool. Like all those people. Like, it's just, they're all in on this together. They're all in on this. We're going to talk tomorrow about this story in reference to Justice Democrats and what the real goal was versus what they told us that Justice Democrats was supposed to be. Like, this is just, all these people are in on this together. The media people, the politician, the Bernie Sanders politician, the progressives, the media people. This is why I'm not telling you to donate to politicians. This is why I continue to tell you, donate your money to mutual aid, because you actually see that money being used and put to work. This is why I can't tell you to donate to people, because we got played. but they're all in this together. Like these people, like AOC, who's next on here? All these people are all in one big club together.
Across left and right, we were being sold out and made to forget why we came to.
You see this? They're all in on it together. I don't know about you, but again, when I donated money, if you donate money to Bernie's campaign, I said Bernie Sanders should give people a refund. Because the thing is, like, you didn't donate to his nonprofit. You donated to donate to his campaign. Let me go to some of the comments. This is a mess. It's a mess. Thank you for the super chat, DC. So you're saying Bernie Madoff? Dwayne says Bernie's been bought at Sabby Sabs. Bernie need to answer for what happened with that money. That's not cool. Thank you for the super chat, Delthea. This is not a new thing. You would think the media would have reported on this sooner. It's almost like the Dem Party wanted a loyal opposition that was more loyal than opposition. We're going to talk about that tomorrow, Delthea, because I have a story for that tomorrow to show you what this was all really about. I really don't believe, like, after what I saw earlier today, with this whole thing with the money with Bernie and other things as well, and the story we're going to discuss tomorrow, I really don't believe that Justice Democrats and this whole progressive movement was actually really about trying to reform the Democratic Party. I believe that Justice Democrats and this whole progressive movement was actually about just challenging Donald Trump and preventing that type of fascism from maintaining power. And I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. So I'm going to save that for tomorrow, but I'll get into that. Thank you for the super chat, DC. Politics are a racket, plain and simple. All political parties, including the Green Party, are private, nonprofit corporations by law. It is a big club. Ravina says, I sure could use my money back. JB says, Sabs, I think there's an independent media industrial complex. People like you, me, RBN, INN, Hardlands Media, etc., are on the outside. Yeah, we sure the hell are. Not too many people rock with me. And Dwayne says we got played. Now, Bernie have to answer where that money went. That's a mess. That is a mess. Is that a Rockfin? Okay, I'll take Rockfin and we'll go to the next story. We'll get into the Grayzone story. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Power they have to do for self to increase turnout. Nina, stop running for office, get off TV and run them CBI amendments. Ohio single payer, public bank to finance infrastructure, outlaw private equity from owning housing. Minimum wage law sets minimum wage permanently above housing cost. Donate to a politician. It is a wish and a prayer. Donate to a CBI or against a ballot initiative, then that is money that'll give instant results. I hear you there, Roger. I hear you there. All right. I think I got everyone. Did I get everyone here? Yeah. And thank you for this tip, Hemp. Open Secrets, the legacy of Senator Frank Church, who headed the church committee that provided the FBI and CIA infiltrated media, academia, philanthropy, affinity groups, and attacked MLK and the entire new left, says that Jill Stein took $10K from Lockheed and $44K from Alphabet, Amazon, etc., waiting for her to debate Diane Sayre. I can check into that. Hemp Seed. Oh, and Gene said Bernie donations went to the DNC, didn't it? Well, also when apparently friends of Bernie, this Sanders Institute, which apparently, according to the article and according to people's reactions on Twitter, it appears most people were not aware of this. So it's just crazy. Okay, something else that's a little bit crazy. We're sticking on the finance issue. The Grayzone. So apparently, Alexei Kovalov click on Alexei real quick. 1 second. This is interesting. Yeah, he's investigative editor at Medusa Project. So Alexei decided that I guess he was going to expose the Grayzone or whatever about where their money comes from. So I don't know if you guys have seen this before, but whenever they have been asked about this, they always explain like, look, our money comes from you guys. Like the people donate to the Grayzone. They're independent, yada, yada. So he decided to do a gotcha. Although instead of like this gotcha hurting the Grayzone, I feel like it actually made the Grayzone look better. So let me go ahead and pull this up. This is interesting. Alexei. So Alexei says, I expected Grayzone's dark money donors to launder their grants via many identical anonymous $100 donations. But it turned out that rumors about Roger Waters, George is his legal name, bankrolling Moscow's pet tankies were true. So first of all, see how they describe people? You see how they, any narrative that you present that is different from the State Department, you're a tanky, you're a Putin puppet. We watch them do this with the Huru movement, right? We watch them do this in reference to Amali Yeshitela. They did this to him. Any type of narrative that you have that's different, this is how they refer to you. Now, I want to go ahead and show you. Let's go ahead and see if what he's saying true about Roger Waters. George is his legal name. Let's see. So Roger Waters, George Roger Waters is an English musician. So George is his legal name. I just wanted to show you guys this so you can see this for yourself. Well, let's go back to Alexei. So Alexei decided to go through, I guess, receipts of their GoFundMe. This just seems so. Anyway, let me show you what he said. Defend the Grayzone and independent journalism. Defend the Grayzone and independent journalism against state repression. And it goes on to say, I founded the Grayzone because there was simply nowhere else for me and many other independent journalists to go. By the time we launched as fully independent outlet in 2018, mainstream press was largely sold out. Okay. So if you scroll down, you'll see it says 266 people have just made a donation. I don't know who Mark is, but here it says George Waters, top donation, $30,000. So here's the question. If they're telling you that the funding comes from the people and you see the funding comes from the people, what's the problem? Is he upset because one of the donors is Roger Waters and Roger Waters is a famous musician? Is he upset because the amount of money that Roger Waters gave him? Or is he just trying to troll? Because if I say that I'm independent and I'm funded by the people, how is this incorrect? Roger Waters is one of the people. I don't see any donations from any think tanks or the military industrial complex. I don't see any donations from, I don't know, like Lockheed Martin. I don't see any donations from Wells Fargo. Like, what's the problem? Is the problem because Roger Waters also has a narrative that the State Department doesn't agree with? Is that what the problem is? People get donations all the time. And I have a feeling that if Roger Waters had the same narrative as the State Department, especially particularly with the war in Ukraine, I don't think Alexei would have went through all this trouble. Like, by the way, this tweet is not in response to another tweet. He just did this. Like, I don't understand why. It was just weird. So this is another smear effort against the Grayzone. Now, if we want to compare the two between what just happened with Bernie Sanders and the Grayzone, right? The difference is people that donated to Bernie's campaign donated to a campaign. That money was supposed to go to support Bernie's campaign. Those people didn't donate that money to go to Bernie Sanders' nonprofit. That's the problem. So if Roger Waters wanted to donate $30,000 to the Grayzone, that's his right. They said they get independent donations. They didn't say we get independent donations from only people who make this amount of money per year. They didn't say that. They didn't give a cap of how high their donations are. So let me show you what happened after he did this. So he goes on to say, it may be a total coincidence, but a couple of weeks ago, I pointed out that an obscure conspiracy blog's claims to be 100% self-sustaining through small individual donations were quite implausible. It doesn't work that way, even for news sites with millions of daily visitors. And then I'll just click on this here. And it says, so who funds it? Willie Nelson Mandela, whoever that is, says individual small donors until proven otherwise. Accusation is not evidence. And Alexi goes on to say individual small donors of an obscure, barely updated blog with fewer monthly visits than my private Twitter account. And these small donors allow said blog, which barely ever even encourages anyone to donate, to stay 100% self-sufficient. Nah, that doesn't sound plausible at all. He goes on to say, some more speculation. What's the Grayzone's current fundraising goal? How close are they to it? How much of the donations goes towards overheads, basic, standard practice, transparency, please? I think the problem is, though, we don't even demand that from corporate media. He's not demanding this of any other outlet. Just the ones that have a different opinion in reference to the war in Ukraine. And that's what this is really about. That's why he made the smear and called them Moscow pet tankies. That's what it's really about. So my whole thing is, let me come out of here. Go down just a little bit. I want you to see some of the responses. Will said, you're an investigative journalist, so I think you should know that a random tweet from a person who isn't involved with the Grayzone isn't the Grayzone, claiming that they're funded by individual small donors. Aaron Mate of the Grayzone claims that they're major funders and high donors. So we'll go into what Aaron says. So he says, yes, I might not have seen it because you blocked me after you had to delete your attempted mockery. Congrats on unblocking. Major funders, all from the US. Can't say 100% because I'm sure there are Patreon donors from other countries. And that's in response to another tweet, but apparently he got blocked by that person. Twitter, like conversations on Twitter is just weird. Like people are just weird by this. Like people will like literally block you, but then they'll still talk about you from behind a block. It's just kind of weird. But and then that person was saying that guy's not an investigative journalist. But that's what this is really about. In my opinion, it is about the fact that they have a different opinion in reference to the war in Ukraine. Remember, they were the ones that found the boot at the bottom of the ocean there. And so people like Alexi, and we're going to go into him in just a second. He's sent out there to basically send out the attack dogs. So Alexi, it says City Uni London grad, World Press Institute fellow, Moscow Times alumni, investigative editor at Medusa Project, right? So of course, you know, Max Blumenthal had to jump in. Oh man, this is bad. He should have never done that tweet. So Max decided to clap back in response to him. And he said, these leaked documents we obtained show how Medusa is fully maintained by NATO as an information weapon to advance London and Washington's agenda against Moscow. They come from the Zinc network an intel cutout of the British Foreign Office. And he has the receipts here. We are currently delivering audience segmentation and targeting support for two of Russia's leading independent media outlets, Meduza and Media Zona, and a range of independent investigative journalists in conjunction with data analysts at King's College London. The outlets lack the expertise and tools to understand their audience profiles and consumption habits, and to therefore promote content effectively to new audiences. Using action research methodology, our team is translating data provided by King's College London into audience segments that can be tracked online and offline, and conducting weekly mentoring sessions with specialists from outlets, upskilling them to create targeting profiles that reach these segments, and adjusting their editorial and commercial strategy accordingly. This innovative model, bringing together leading academia, local journalists, and cutting-edge digital marketing, helps outlets to reach broader audiences and create common framing of issues, thus contributing to a healthy democratic public discourse. He goes on to add another receipt. Activity 5, building resilience. The recent persecution of Ivan Gulanov, the freelance investigative journalist working for the new Latvia-based website Meduza, illustrates how journalists still face threats of trolling and intimidation when attempting to expose or counter Russian disinformation. Our activity will focus on 3 key areas: counseling and mental health support, specialist advisors, this is interesting, and cybersecurity. Boy, man, I'm going to read the whole thing, but he goes on to say, this is funny, hundreds of supporters have donated over the past 48 hours to help us create dedicated positions for, that's Alex Rubenstein, he was here, and Kit Clarenberg and Wyatt Reed. NATO tools like Alexei are melting down now. Help us keep the momentum going here. And then that's the GoFundMe there. So one of the things that I want to say, and I want to get your opinion on as well. Let me go back to Alexei's tweet. There was a piece here where Alexei said a blog that rarely, where is it? This part here. Individual small donors of an obscure, barely updated blog with fewer monthly visits than my private Twitter account. Let's talk about that for just a second, because there's something that I do think should be mentioned here. When independent journalists are asking for donations for people to support their work, especially investigative journalists, that includes things like travel, accommodations, food. You got to pay for food when you're traveling. Traveling overseas isn't cheap. So it's obvious, like Max and Aaron have been to places like, they've been to Gaza, right? They've been to Israel. They've been to Europe. They've been to all these different countries. That costs money. So I don't know how often Alexei wants them to produce articles, how many articles he wants them to produce per month. But the reality is that you do have to pay to do the investigative reporting. Those things aren't free. So I feel like Alexei here is kind of being like a gatekeeper. I told you there's so many of these people. They're like the gatekeepers of journalism, the gatekeeper, especially independent media. Oh, you got a donation from this person. Like, it's just the gatekeepers. And so I feel like Alexei was being a gatekeeper, but also he's trying to smear them. He was hoping that by posting this, that this would actually discourage people from donating to the Grayzone. That's what he was hoping that would happen. But honestly, people saw this, and let me see. Oh, I hate this new format on Twitter. I used to be able to just pick on the quote tweets, and I can't do that anymore. But obviously, what happened was some people saw that and they were like, Roger Waters donated $30,000 to the Grayzone. Damn, Roger Waters is based. It didn't work the way that they thought it would. Like, that actually made Roger Waters look damn good, that he's supporting independent journalism. And that also made Grayzone look kind of based, like, well, damn, like, you guys are doing a really good job if someone's willing to donate that much to you. So this did not work in Alexei's favor. That's the problem. That's the problem. It actually made people look kind of based. But we'll talk about that tonight on Call In. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about, I think I put that on the Call In tab, and Bernie Sanders. I think it's that one and the Bernie one, the finance stuff. Like, do you feel that there's a certain amount that's too much to donate to someone? Do you feel that there's a certain amount for that? Or do you feel like if it's an individual donation, it doesn't really matter? Don't look at me. No one's giving me $30,000. Okay. I was gonna tell you that, but I don't do investigative journalism. Just FYI, like, no one's giving me that kind of money. But we can talk about that tonight on Call In. Do you have a problem with that? Or do you think that that's actually pretty cool that Roger Waters is trying to help? Something to think about. We'll get that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Roger, I think I skipped over the first one, so we'll go back. Ohio LBI legislative BI also would have upped the petition requirement to disqualify the ballot from collecting signatures for 44 counties to all 88. Seeing Ohio has 8 million plus registered voters, and with a turnout of 5.6 or 5 to 6 million in presidential elections and 4 million plus turnout in midterms, the special election turnout was 3 million plus. Impressive. But there are 2 million not voting in president years and 4 million not voting in the midterms. We must educate the people. Empower that they have to do for themselves to increase the turnout. Okay, and I got that part already. Yep. Okay, thank you so much for that. But yeah, we'll talk about it. You guys let me know what you think. Now, I do have one more, I guess you'd say surprise story, maybe not surprise, but I do want to give you an update in reference to Imran Khan, because I did talk about him. I think it was the other night, actually. And there has been an update in reference to why he was removed. And this is coming from The Intercept. Now, Ryan Grimm and Murtaza Hussein actually reported this. So I do want to make sure you have this news. Secret Pakistan cable documents U.S. pressure to remove Imran Khan. So let's go ahead and dive into this. We're not going to really read the entire article, but you need to hear this. The U.S. State Department encouraged the Pakistani government in a March 7th, 2022 meeting to remove Imran Khan as prime minister over his neutrality on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, according to a classified Pakistani government document obtained by The Intercept. So, you know that he has been arrested. We mentioned this the other night, that he is now in prison. He is not allowed to run for office for 5 years. And now we have more information that tells you that the U.S. State Department actually was behind it all, that they encouraged the Pakistani government to remove him because he remained neutral in reference to this conflict with Russia and Ukraine. And look at the way that they're responding in reference to some of the African countries now who also remain neutral in reference to Russia and Ukraine. I'll go on a little bit more here that says the meeting between the Pakistani ambassador to the United States and the two State Department officials has been the subject of intense scrutiny, controversy, and speculation in Pakistan over the past year and a half, as supporters of Khan and his military and civilian opponents jockeyed for power. The political struggle escalated on August 5th when Khan was sentenced to 3 years in prison on corruption charges and taken into custody for the second time since his ouster. Khan's defenders dismissed the charges as baseless. The sentence also blocks Khan, Pakistan's most popular politician, from contesting elections expected in Pakistan later this year. And then I just want to bring in this word from Ben Norton. The same day a document was leaked proving the U.S. was behind the coup in Pakistan. The coup regime has dissolved parliament to hold elections while the country's most popular politician, Imran Khan, is in prison and can't participate. The bogus election with no real opposition will be used to legitimize the unelected coup regime, and the U.S. is sponsoring these blatant attacks on democracy in Pakistan. So here we go. We got the U.S. government also involved in removing political leader in Pakistan, and also the U.S. government involved in trying to convince leaders in Niger to bring back in the leader that they removed. Makes you feel a little bit differently now in reference to the situation with Imran Khan, doesn't it? Knowing that the U.S. was behind it all the time. Eric, we can clip that one too, because I'll just do it as like an update. That way people have updated information in reference to that story. But boy, I tell you. So they took him out. It took him out. All because he wouldn't go along with their State Department narrative in reference to Russia and Ukraine. You can't even remain neutral. You see this, guys? It's not enough. Like, you don't have to say that you're on their side. He's not saying that he was on the side of Russia. He just said he wanted to remain neutral. You can't even do that. So there you go. All right, Eric, I think we have one super chat that needs to be read. I'm going to take a really quick break before call-in, and then we'll jump on call-in. I'll be right back.
All right. Hello. Let me check.
I think I might have messed up with the name. Eric, you might have to check if you have time. Someone said James Walton.
So maybe it's a different Walton.
It could be a different Walton, but that Walton still has $200,000.
We'll figure it out in call-in.
Okay.
All right, here we are on a good Thursday night. This is where we give Miss Sabrina a little break before we jump into the call-in. Let me show that call-in screen. Let me flip a few screens around here, and we can show you what we're going to be talking about on the call-in tonight. We're going to give you a link if you want to do call-in on your browser, or you can install the call-in app on your smartphone and do it that way and search up Sabby Sabs. Tonight we've got Bernie and Grayzone donations. You know, it's always the thing we say is follow the money, and we can talk about that on call-in. And I'll also put in here the link to the call-in. Sabby will probably pin it to the top of the chat, so you can do it when through the browser or through the smartphone. And tell us what you think. These conversations are always interesting out there on the call-in. So let's see, what were we talking about tonight? I always have to take some notes to show to remember what we talked about and whatnot, and if I had any comments. Oh, first, speaking of comments, all right, let's hit some of these chats. Thanks for this super chat, Will S. A Biden vote equals a vote for World War III with Russia. I feel you there, Will. Thanks for the super chat. Desert Mantis says, I donated to Matt's GoFundMe. Yep, I am myself. I'm a regular monthly contributor to the Grayzone. Have been for, I think it feels like years now, because they're just such a high level, unique news organization, independent, that you just don't see much about there. And I would encourage everyone to support the Grayzone. And yeah, Ashura posted, if Matt is buzzsaw then what's if Aaron Mate is Buzzsaw, then what will Max's nickname be? The pile driver, or we can talk about that on Call In, any Max nicknames. Thanks. And Bill Bradley said, BRICS is like G7. They will only let in nations with strong economies. It will help nations with weak economies, but they won't be admitted to BRICS. And that'll be interesting. We'll see how that stuff plays out. And we got another one from Mr. Roger on the rock fins. Let's take a gander at that one. There we are. Out on the rock fins. Thanks for this tip comment, Roger Meadows, who says the responsibility of the government to secure our rights makes them obligated to financially secure our rights when we can't do it ourselves. Media is protected under the First Amendment. Time for an amendment that gives investigative reporting a right to full government financing. By no means will the government expect anything in returns. I have a right to financing. Give me my money so I can continue investigating you. Thanks for that on the rock fins, Roger. Yeah, I mean, we definitely always want to be following the money, and we're going to be talking about that on Call In and always in general. At least I want to in my book. One of the things with the I may have a little bit of a dissenting view when it comes to this Ohio ballot measure. Not that I necessarily would have voted for it, but it is a little tricky because the ballot measure is talking about the threshold you need for an amendment to the state constitution, and it's not the same as amending state laws. And most states do have different thresholds. Most states do have a higher threshold for changing the state constitution. And I mean, that does make a certain amount of sense because the constitution is the baseline law of the state, and you do have to be somewhat careful in terms of just of governance of just amending your state constitution kind of willy-nilly. And the other way I would frame it would be a number of years ago when marriage equality was on these ballots, there were a number of state constitutional amendments that passed that basically banned gay marriage. And a number of these states would pass a lot easier if the threshold is 50%. And then you end up with this very odious amendment on your state constitution on a 50% threshold. And kind of the idea of the 60%, of the higher threshold is that you don't want to make it too easy to change your constitution. So I'm not saying that this should necessarily have been voted in, but it is, potentially a little bit tricky in terms of those thresholds. And I think people would have looked at it a lot differently if the proposed amendment coming up was not about pro-choice, about reproductive rights, but if it was a right-wing amendment that was coming into the Constitution, then to propose change, then people might view it a little differently. So sometimes it is a little more complicated than it might seem. Well, the other thing I wanted to mention, make sure I don't forget, there's a push in Massachusetts and in many states by the Cornel West campaign to get people registered for the Green Party. I did that myself, and I threw up a tweet about it. It's really easy in Massachusetts. You just go to the Secretary of State's website, and you just click through to change your registration. So you can do it in 5 minutes if you're in Massachusetts and you want to support the Cornel West campaign. It does help the campaign in getting them on the ballot in Massachusetts or in any other states to register for Green Party at this point, and I would recommend it. And I guess the one other thing we're going to be talking about Bernie Sanders and those contributions, and it definitely does look like a Bernie got paid, Bernie got the money situation. One thing to be really mindful of is that when you look at something like Clinton Foundation or the other things that happen in DC, their payoffs are like 1,000 times worse than anything Bernie's doing. Now, that's no That's no excuse for the Bernie situation. Let's hit the screen there. But what I would say about it is the investigations and the outrage should be 1,000 times worse for what's going on in DC. And it's yeah, it's
I have even just FYI, I have even worse news about James M. Walton. So it's not good for him either. James M. Walton began his professional career with Gulf Oil Corporation.
Oh, one of the good guys.
Yeah, which was founded by his maternal grandfather, William Larimer Mellon. So this was a oil. Jesus
money.
Christ, this is worse.
At least it wasn't Walmart. Let me throw up. Thanks for the super chat, Justin. Yay, thank you, Eric. Back at you, Justin. Justin B is with Green Party and is a big booster of the Cornel West campaign. And thanks for all the kind comments in the chat.
All right.
All right, we're going to see yous in the call-in.
Let's do it. Let's do it. All right, guys, let's head on over to call in. We're going to talk about this money situation. This is episode 120. The link is pinned to the top of the chat there. And it's Bernie and Grayzone donations. Let's discuss the recent controversy surrounding donations to Bernie's campaign and the Grayzone donation from Roger Waters. I do think these are two different types of things. I think if you donate to a campaign, that money should go to the campaign. That money should not go anywhere else. And there's a lot of people, like I said, a lot of people on social media are not happy about this. Like when this article came out, no word from Bernie Sanders yet. But let's go ahead and head on over there to call in. The link is pinned, should be pinned to the top of the chat. I'll see you guys over there. Just click on the link and we'll do the damn thing. Other than that, guys, I'll be back tomorrow night. We do have a couple of guests that are coming up. I think Matt Taibbi is going to be back next week. Cornel West will be back, I think, the week after that. And it looks like we might be getting Dr. Shiva as well. So we do have a couple of interviews coming up, so stay tuned for that. I'll keep you posted. Other than that, let's head on over to call in. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.